Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Come on in. Say hello. I'm going to check my sound to make sure everybody can hear me and all that good stuff. Come on in and say hello. So check on my other device. Evening. Good evening. Yep. I can hear myself, so that means you can hear me too. All right. Wonderful. All right. So it is Monday, Motivational Monday, and I'm back with the message. For those who are new, I am Kathy Michelle, and I am an educator, I'm an author, and an entrepreneur. And I provide services to assist people in becoming a, novice entrepreneur like myself, or becoming an author. I'm a self-published author with books on Amazon, and I am a newly retired educator. So just a few months ago, I retired. So that is what the topic is tonight. So as you come on in, feel free to drop any questions you might have. I retired from LA Unified School District, so most of my, information pertains to my school district, but it might work as well for your school district or whatever profession you're in. Feel free to ask, any questions, if I could, if it pertains to what I know, then of course I will answer the question. If you're watching a replay, still you can go ahead and put the question there, and I will come back and check for any questions and answer as soon as I can. All right. So it's almost 6 o'clock. I like to try and be on time as much as possible to make sure everybody is getting the information. So I had posted that I was presenting this information at the Education Expo on Saturday. It was in Los Angeles and Gardena, and I felt like, okay, you know what, this information, still might need to reach some more people to make sure you're informed about things going on before you retire. So it was a great event, and I got a lot of great feedback. So I'm like, yeah, I think I need to go ahead and put more of this information out there so that people can go into retirement confidently. All right. So I want you to think about what it's going to take to have a joyful retirement, okay? And there's at least 3 or 4 topics that I'm going to hit on tonight. Probably be here for about 20 to 30 minutes going over the information, but basically just a few topics just to make sure, you're on the right track. Because, in your mind, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to retire, maybe in 2 years or 3 years or 5, whatever it is. Maybe it's 10 years. You might need to hear the steps you need to take in order to make that a successful retirement, okay? So I want you to think about dreaming big, but planning smart, okay? You have to plan smart, all right? So the first question I want you to think about is, do you have your financials in order? So in my 20s, back when I was still a classroom teacher, I think I had been teaching, about 10 years at that point. And there's always people that come around to the school, different banking companies, that have, here's the savings account. Here we want you to sign up for this credit union, and we offer this, we offer that. So listen to those people when they come around. I'm not saying you got to sign up for everything, but some of them really do help you when it's time for your retirement. Even if you're only, taking $50 out of your check each month, that money, when it adds up 30 years later, that's a nice amount of money, okay? So when the people come around telling you, hey, you need to sign up for an annuity, or you need to sign up for a 403B or 457B, there's all these, Roth plans, IRA plans. There's so many plans out there. So do your due diligence, of course, and, find out which one is the best fit for you and your family. But I do encourage you to get those accounts, get those savings, those college plans, because they have some that are just for college. I had one opened up when my daughter was born. It was like, okay, let me open up this, I think it was a 457B, I think that's what it's called. And I opened up this, college tuition account just for that. So just look into it, see what works for you, but do invest in some kind of plan that's going to help you in retirement, so that when it's time and you can pull that money out, whether it be to supplement your retirement check or to, pay down some credit card bills or whatever it is, you have that option. I suggest starting it as soon as you start working, sign up for them, So all those young newbie teachers, you're thinking, oh, retirement is, that's so long away. No, it's not that far away, okay? I remember being a first-year teacher, so it's like the time goes by pretty quick, okay? So in my 20s, that's what I highly suggest you look into doing, getting those annuities and Roth accounts, savings accounts, those kinds of things. And choose your medical insurance wisely. I started off with Kaiser, and then eventually I switched over to another plan, Torrance Memorial, and I just felt like it met my needs better. So don't, make sure you're checking out these different medical plans as well, okay? Also, when you're thinking about planning for your retirement, so that was my 20s. In my 30s, I started thinking about how long I wanted to be in the classroom as a classroom teacher, okay? So I started thinking about, well, maybe, I'll do, teaching in the classroom for 20 years or so, and then, perhaps go and try something out of the classroom. Never wanted to be an administrator, but I knew I might need that administrative credential to support other positions, because there's lots of other positions that require the administrative credential, but you're not a principal, you're not an AP or anything like that. A lot of the HR positions and things in the school district, things like that. So you might need to think about leveling up. I highly suggest, once you get in your 30s, maybe you've been teaching like 15 years at that point, start leveling up. Don't get stuck staying in the classroom your entire teaching career. See what other options you have to branch out, build your capacity as an educator, get other credentials. I started off as an elementary teacher, and then I decided I wanted to try middle school. So that was a different authorization, a different credential. So I had to go back and take some classes and, pass the test or whatever. I don't even know what it is now that you have to do to do all these upgrades. But I did what I needed to do so that I had the option of teaching at a middle school or a high school. So it just branches, your field of area so that you can be marketable in different careers. So think beyond just being a classroom teacher. And so when I started thinking like this, I started asking, other people who were out of the classroom, like, hey, what are some things you suggest about, out of classroom positions and making more money and things like that. And so one of my mentors at the time, he told me that, hey, before you retire, you need to have a position to where you are making at least minimum 6 figures. Minimum. Okay, $100,000. Okay? Because when it comes, time when they take all the taxes out and this and that, you want to be able to have, a good chunk of money after, you retire. So I took that to the head and like, all right, let me see what positions are out there that has a salary, that's maybe it's not starting at that, but maybe it'll eventually get to that. So I started looking at the pay scale, our pay scale went all the way down to the bottom, all the way over, all the way down to the bottom to see, okay, what is the maximum money I could make as a classroom teacher in 30 years when I'm ready to retire? Here, what is the max amount of money that I could possibly make as a teacher? And I looked at it, and it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't $100,000. It wasn't a six-figure salary. So I'm like, oh, it's time for me to go, okay? And I wasn't the type that was very social. I'm more of an introvert person. I didn't see myself, doing anything out of the classroom, stepping outside my comfort zone. I didn't see it. But it didn't stop me from going ahead and applying for positions. I started looking at what areas that I enjoy teaching, what things, people I feel like I could be comfortable around. Was I going to be comfortable, around a whole bunch of administrators, or would I be more comfortable around my peers working with teachers and things like that? So I started looking at positions with that frame of mind. And so what came up was an instructional coach. So that was the position that I eventually got, and it was at the salary that I needed it to be, and that's what I did the last 10 years of my career. So the first 22 years I was in the classroom, elementary and middle school, taught both, and then the last 10 years I got out of classroom position, making the six figures that I wanted, and I was like, okay, I'm on the right track of what I want to do. So if you're in the classroom, or you're in a position where you're not going to be making the salary that you want to make when when you hit that 30-year mark, level up, okay? The next thing, another way to help supplement your retirement when it's time for you to retire. So we have our regular, retirement check, and then there's the supplemental retirement check, okay? So your supplemental check is for all the jobs and things you did outside of your regular teacher hours. So if you did after-school tutoring, if you did Saturday school, if you did credit recovery, if you did workshops, on Saturday, or workshops after school, any field trips. I know sometimes teachers got paid to go on field trips on a Saturday or Sunday or something like that, or for the weekend, you take those big trips to Catalina or wherever. Teachers, usually get paid for that. All that money, yes, you got it on your check, when it happened, but you're also going to get paid again. Okay, it's like getting paid twice. You're going to get paid again in your supplemental check when you retire. So you want to stack as many of those Saturday workshops as you can muster. I know they're long sometimes. I know it's kind of tedious, and sometimes they make you do the homework and things like that. But just look at it as that's piling up into your supplemental check. Summer school, I don't recommend doing every summer because you need a break. You don't want to burn yourself out. But maybe every other summer, do your summer school. Maybe every other semester you do the after-school tutoring or the Saturday school. Give yourself some breaks in between. But, I think it's worth it when you see that supplemental check as coming in along with your regular retirement check. So that automatically supplements your retirement check, okay? So keep that in mind, okay? And feel free, if you have questions, to drop them in the chat. So another thing you need to think about is getting your ducks in a row. And when I say that everybody's different. Everybody's on a different financial path. We all, have different kind of bills and and dreams and aspirations and things like that. But for me, okay, when I got in my 40s, I started getting my ducks in a row. And so this is just me. I had some objectives, and then I had some goals. And I kind of differentiate between the two, because for me, the objectives had to happen. Okay, it's kind of like standards. You know, you got those standards and objectives on the board. It's kind of like, this is a must do. Okay, you know, if it says you got to teach the kids, you know, the S sound or whatever it is, or algebra, whatever it is, it's a must do. So for me, I had some must do objectives in order for me to go on and reach the other goals that I wanted to achieve. So the must do objectives were getting that out of the classroom position so that I can have 6 figures before I retired. My other objective was to get my master's degree and administrative credential. So I got that. This is all within a 10-year period. Okay, like I said, this was in my 40s. I think I was like 45 when I came up with these objectives. So I did that. And then I knew I wanted to, have some kind of business as well. Okay, so whether it be a side business or online, whatever, what side passion, they say side passion now versus side hustle. I knew I wanted to have a business that brought in additional streams of income, because why have one stream of income? But, God forbid something happens, and we know how everything went during COVID, 5 years ago. Some people, were, the essential workers, and had to go out there and do what they had to do. And some people got to work from home, and some people lost their job, so you just got to be prepared. So always have multiple streams of income. So in my mind, I'm like, I gotta have another stream of income, because just depending on this one job for, income and benefits and all that kind of stuff, it didn't sit right with me. So I knew that was part of one of my objectives that had to happen. Okay. And, it's just, for me, it became writing books and publishing, having my online services available to people who want to hire me for coaching or presentations, like I just did on Saturday, or whatever it might be. Sometimes people want me to do a group event where I'm working with a group of kids, teenagers, who want to be entrepreneurs. I wanted to have something that created multiple streams of income that depended on my schedule, that was flexible to when I wanted to do it. It wasn't like tied down to, I got to clock in somewhere else after I leave another job. I didn't want that. So that's why I created streams of income that were very freeing. E-commerce. I have a TPT store. I have a Etsy store. All these things don't require me to be somewhere at a certain time. Not saying anything is wrong with that. Not saying I wouldn't go back and sub or something like that. But again, it's on my time. It's flexible to when I want to do it. Okay. So just think about that when you're saying get your ducks in a row. And then, so those were my objectives, my must-dos. And then I had some other goals that I knew I may do and I may not do. So some of those were, I wanted to have some rental property, and I wanted to have a dream house when I retire that I can putter around in the backyard and grow vegetables and what have you. That was part of my, my dream of, having my ducks in a row kind of thing. And, I've always wanted to teach at the college level. I haven't done that yet. So that's one of my kind of like bucket list, may do kinds of things. So that might come into play, probably next year. I'll probably get into looking at that. So, plan is that's the key. You have to plan, because if you don't plan, what do they say? If you fail to plan, then you fail. It's just like, why put yourself in a situation where, things are a struggle? Okay, you don't want to retire and then be struggling with, oh, this is not enough money. Now I got to go back and do this, and I have to work, 4 or 5 days a week, or I have to get a part-time job. That's not what you want. You don't want something to be a requirement. When you retire, you want it to be a smooth retirement or a joyful retirement. Another thing with getting your ducks in a row, pay off whatever credit cards you can pay off some cars. If you got tuition, you need to pay, try and pay off as much as possible. Okay. Now, if it's not possible, then don't worry about it. But just, live within your means so you can pay it off sooner than later. Because you just definitely don't want a whole bunch of high ticket, bills, when you retire. So just think about that. So even though I chose, again, everybody's different, I chose to buy a home, during my last year of work, but that was just for my goals and objectives. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's what I had planned for. Okay, I made arrangements ahead of time so that that God forbid anything happened, but I made plans to be successful enough to afford to buy a home, my dream home. It was one of my, May dues. And having that rental property and selling it allowed me to have that money to put down on a house. So it was, it's all in my head. It's a crazy plan. Or, sometimes it's on my vision board. I do believe in vision boards. They work very well. So most of it was in my head, but a lot of it was either on a vision board or written down in a notebook somewhere so that I can keep going back and referring to it. Another thing about getting your ducks in a row, your beneficiaries, your wills, your trusts, your medical dependents, all those things need to be checked and make sure it's in order. So like, my beneficiaries, I think when I checked before I retired, I think I had my mother on the beneficiary list, and, she passed, a long time ago. So it's just like, you forget about these little things, and then next thing you know, you're retired, and you're like, why do I have these people listed down, and they're no longer, in my life, or I'm divorced, and, you used to have someone's ex on there. So please consider that as you start to get your ducks in a row, okay? So the next thing I want you to think about, we touched a little bit on it, is what will be your options of additional streams of income after you retire. So in my school district, LA Unified, there's a waiting period of 6 months, and it's just kind of like a cooling off period pretty much, where if you wanted to go back and substitute or do anything with the school district that pays into the STIRS program, you have to wait 6 months. Okay, so if you're just like, hey, I don't want to just sit home and do anything, I want a part-time job, you can still do that, but just make sure it's not paying into the same retirement program that you're getting a check from, because they will deduct any money that you make during that 6 months cool off period from your retirement check. So like I said, every school district is different, so definitely check with your school district, but that's how LA Unified is. And you can, there's some schools you can still do, like private schools. You could do some, I think universities have a different retirement system. So if you wanted to still work with kids or teach kids after you retire, just check into those kinds of programs and just make sure it's not going into your retirement benefits program. And then after the 6 months, you can go back and teach wherever you want. Now there is a cap, okay? Like again, this is LA Unified. So every year the cap is different. So for example, my cap is $74,000 for the year gross. That's the most I can make in a year subbing or doing any kind of work in my school district because they just require a cap. So, that's just something to think about. But if you decide, hey, I want to move to Texas or whatever and just start teaching in Texas or Arizona or wherever, then you can start all over fresh and be a brand new teacher in another state and still be getting your check from, the California. Only thing that you have to worry about is health insurance. So, of course, you're in a different state. You're not going to be using the same health insurance as California. So, if you're willing to give up your health insurance, that's something you need to think about if you decide to move out of the state of California. But for me, if I want to continue getting 100% health insurance, I have to stay in California to get that. So just something to think about as you start planning what you want to do after retirement. And then so when I talked about additional streams of income, just some suggestions, that might fit in with, educators who are retiring. Libraries, I feel, are conducive to kind of, it's kind of education still. You might be working with some kids or things like that. That's always an idea. Tutoring, things like that. Home daycares, if you were an English professor or, history teacher, you might get into proofreading, editing papers. There's lots of online, platforms where you're basically a freelance editor, a freelance proofreader, things like that. Look into your passions. What are you passionate about doing? Your hobbies. Turn those hobbies into something that can earn you some money. So if you like to decorate, maybe look into having a staging business for a real estate company. Or if you like to make jewelry, look into being a vendor and having pop-ups and things like that. So there's so many options, when you retire. You can dibble and dabble in a bunch of them, okay? The sky's the limit, pretty much. So those were just a few things that I, quickly, that I just kind of wanted to recap from the Educational Expo that I presented at, just to make sure, the information is there and so I can support and help anyone. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will come back and check them. As always, my books, as you see behind me, are available on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon. I have my t-shirts. This is another one of my t-shirts. Who remembers what this line is from? Relax, relate, release, and I added retired. It's a different world. Yes, yes, yes. So that's available on Etsy and Tea Republic. So just another way I make multiple streams of income. So thank you for joining me tonight, wherever you are watching. And next video, probably in another week or two, and I'll go a little bit deeper into how you can start getting your side passion, your side hustle business, getting your ideas together, trying to figure out what you want to do. Don't wait until retirement. A lot of people say, I'm going to do my, business when I retire. No, get started now. Before you retire. It makes it such an easier, smoother transition if you already have your business up and running and you have the capital because you're getting your regular paycheck to build, your own business. So that'll be the next Facebook Live. And I think that's it for tonight. Let me check my notes. Yeah. Everyone have a blessed day, and thank you. Good night.